Hi, Clutter Fairy fans. This is the Clutter Fairy Weekly for August 29th, 2023. I'm your co-host, Ed Gumnick, and I'm speaking with Gayle Goddard, certified professional organizer and owner of the Clutter Fairy in Houston, Texas.
Hi, everybody. The Clutter Fairy Weekly is the webcast and podcast that digs deep into the clutter that piles up between you and the life that you want to be living. We explore the habits and behaviors that lead to clutter, and we suggest strategies to slow the accumulation, reduce the collection, and comfortably manage the stuff we decide to keep.
If you're new to our Zoom meeting, we want to let you know that you can share your comments and questions via the chat, and I'll try to make sure Gayle addresses them before we move on to another topic. You can also use the raise hand feature if you'd like to make a comment or ask a question yourself via audio or video. And we are streaming the webcast live on Facebook, so you can share your questions and comments there, and I'll relay them to Gayle. We're going to start by recapping last week's Weekly Tittle, which was called Break the Log Jam. The assignment was to work your way through one of your cluttered log jams. Let's hear from our participants in Zoom and on Facebook. Who broke through with an item or small collection of backlog clutter this week? Please let us know in the comments. Tish shared her Tittle report in a comment on our website. Tish writes, "Yay, I finally got to do a Tittle."
Yay.
Log jam cleared. Makeup. It annoyed me every day that there was too much stuff on the bathroom counter. I made room in the bathroom cabinets by throwing out an entire plastic bag full of makeup. Some were really expensive, which had made me hang on to them even though I haven't used them in years. My counter is now only for everyday simple makeup, and a small selection of fancy makeup, in quotes, is in a box in the bathroom cupboard. I can't believe I moved house twice with all that makeup.
That is a perfect example of the Tittle, fixing the problem on the bathroom counter with makeup and separating the everyday use items from the fancy air quote items, and parking those fancy things in the cabinet was an excellent thought to help clear the counter. You recognize that the problem on the counter was partially because the amount being stored was already too full, and you cleared that out to make the space you needed. So overall, you analyzed the situation very well and made the changes that you needed to fix it. And so great job. Be very proud of your work. And I'm sure that now when you go in every day, it's not annoying you anymore. And it's much easier to manage, and you know where your stuff is, you know where your daily use is, and it's not mixed in with all the other stuff you're not using right now. And so good job. That was an excellent thing to do. And thanks for reporting it back to us.
Tammy reports, I got rid of 5 lotions because they were out. I feel sad. I feel a need to keep them due to past neglect and deprivation.
I understand that sensation, but I think, if it's lotions that you're not going to use, and it's also things that, potentially are old enough that they're not safe, then it's the right thing to do to not save them and keep them in your, in your environment. You don't want to keep up with them that way. Then you're just storing things that are just kind of waste anyway. So not worth the effort of keeping up with it. And
take a moment to revel in the space you emptied.
Right. Like you made an improvement that benefits you directly and immediately. And so while it's sad that you have to sort of let go of stuff, it's also good that you've created space that helps you feel more serene and comfortable. It's a good trade-off.
All right. Susie reports, I finally took towels and recyclables, plastic bottles and aluminum cans, to the Humane Society. The towels had been in a bag in the house for months.
Oh, good job for finishing that chore. And I'm sure they needed it. So good for you.
Well, I guess where Susie's in SoCal, I guess where she is, the Humane Society must collect recyclables. Marsh shared, I broke through my jam inside my vehicle. Very powerful to have a clean car inside and out.
Excellent. That's always exciting.
3 boxes of stuff, 2 boxes of flyers, papers, and apple cores.
And now it's done. Congratulations. That's got to feel light. I mean, I think when you clear out a car that's been sort of overfull, it's an immediate microcosm of cleaning your house, right? Then you have a clean environment all of a sudden. Good for you. That's great.
Jane reports, last week I mentioned that my refrigerator stopped working. While waiting for the new fridge, hopefully coming tomorrow. I've been going through everything in the old one. Lessons learned: don't accept food from people.
Yes. Yes.
There was a lot of it put in the freezer and never eaten. I'm getting a smaller fridge since I won't be taking in food I won't eat.
Right. And I get it that, people are trying to not waste the food that they've made and they're trying to offer it. But if you're not prepared to eat it right then you don't need to take it. And so good for you for setting the boundary. And now you can say, oh, you know what? My freezer died, my fridge died, and now I have a much smaller one. I don't have room for extras. You can just blame it on the fridge. Right. So it'll be okay.
M says, I started the Tittle with too big of a project, experiencing a lot of anxiety and making no progress at all. However, I later needed something in the pile, and in digging down to it, discovered that there were empty boxes and trash in the pile, which gave me a calmer mindset. I think I will be able to tackle the pile with better results now.
That's great. So you know that there's some empties in there and there's some trash in there. And so use that as your easy pickings start of the project. Don't try to do anything special in there. Just go through, filter across the room and pull out those boxes and the trash. And it will shrink the population, and it will, from the act of moving through it all, looking for the trash and recycling, will help you identify generally what kinds of things are in there. You'll get a better feel for what you're going to have to face, and it will help lessen some of your anxiety because you'll have a better idea of what's actually in there to deal with. And if you can reduce it and it cuts it in half immediately by taking the trash and recycling out, you will have made a big progress, right? You will have made a big dent in the population. And so it's a good place to start that doesn't require a lot of decision making. If it's trash, it's trash. If it's a cardboard box, it needs to be recycling, you can get rid of it. And so you can go put it in the bin. And so those aren't hard decisions to make. You just have to identify the pieces and then take the action. And it's, it's a way for you to wade in and make a visible dent and get your hand around what's really going on in there before you dive in to do the rest. So good luck. Come back and tell us how it goes.
Ellen reports, I found a couple of boxes of unopened CPAP supplies for a machine that was recalled and not replaced.
Oh.
All bagged up for a nurse friend who works with the under/uninsured.
Right. Who probably
Wonderful.
have some of those machines or had some of those machines replaced. And so she can provide supplies. That's good.
Excellent. All right. I think we should move on because we have a lot to talk about. Some categories of decluttering and organizing are harder than others, sometimes a lot harder. But if we focus on the sources of the difficulty, we may gain fresh insight that will help us face our worst problem areas. Today, we're going to explore the factors that make the hardest organizing projects and tasks so difficult, and offer strategies to help you face those challenges.
I have to start out by saying, oh my gosh, y'all totally brought it in the survey.
Yeah, seriously.
So the audience shared so many heartfelt personal stories and experiences. We can't even begin to do them all justice. We can barely scratch the surface. I really encourage everybody to go and read what all of you put into the surveys because they are very interesting reading. And so cfhou.com/results 180. That's the episode number, results 180. So that you can see the survey results, because I think everybody really took the opportunity to tell their own stories and to tell their own experiences. And here Ed's put the link in the chat as well, so that you can enjoy the stuff that everybody has written for us. It was really great.
It was so great that as we pulled everything together, we decided this is 2 shows. So
we can't possibly cover all this in one.
If you think you gave us a gem of a response in the survey and you don't hear it today, tune in next week.
Because we might have some more to say about it.
Okay.
So to get started, we asked our audience to select the categories of clutter that you find most difficult to work on. We offered a list of 16 categories. Ed and I brainstormed and came up with 16 categories that clients frequently have trouble with. And here are the top problem categories for our viewers and listeners. 47% of you said photographs right off the bat. Photographs at the top of the list. 42% of you said family heirlooms and other inherited items, of course. 41% of you said personal papers, not a surprise at all. 31% said hobby, art, and craft supplies. And then that category was also tied with financial paperwork. So both of those categories got 31%. And then rounding out the top 10 was the clothing, including shoes, items associated with a person or a relationship, reading materials associated with unfinished projects, and mementos and souvenirs. So those were the big winners in our list. But the fact that photography, family heirlooms, and personal papers are way up at the top, like way more than a third of you, maybe like, it's like you're really getting close to half at that point. People expressed challenges there, and that doesn't surprise me at all. We also asked our audience to list any categories that we didn't include in our list in order to rank them. We're not going to deep dive into these categories right now, but we'll talk about them more as we get into the subject of why some categories are so hard. And here's some of the responses we got that you guys wrote in. Holiday and seasonal items. That's a good one. Kids' keepsakes, of course. Says, we should have put that in our list, and we don't have kids, so we forgot. Electronics, boxing, packaging, and paperwork. Oh my God, that's so true. So much of my work is about, handling people's electronic boxes. Medical or assistive equipment and supplies. Somebody wrote their husband's old computer parts and tools. Yes, if you're an OG computer buyer, you have a lot of that stuff. Toiletries and medications was a good one. Movies and CDs was another. Handmade items, that's a big one, depending on whether it's you as an artist or your kids as, bringing home stuff from school. Decor, including the wall art. So lots of you have issues because you collect decor. Medical records, the older we get, the bigger that category is. Medications that may come in handy, for example, non-expired painkillers, sore throat pills, etc. And then items that are meant to be for other people or places, but still linger at our place. So that was kind of a broad category that we're going to explore later. But sometimes there's stuff in your house that doesn't really belong to you. It belongs to somebody else, and somehow it's still in your place. So that's another challenging category. So then we asked our audience, for the stuff that you find the hardest to organize, tell us about how or why this type of stuff trips you up. And this is really the heart of the matter, and this is where all the meat of the answers came from. So this is where we're going to be really quoting you guys. Let's talk about where we get stuck as we're trying to manage difficult categories. So the first one on the list is our emotional or sentimental attachment. So Elizabeth said, sentimental items are difficult. My wedding dress, handmade dresses, a coat from my childhood, my mother's fur, and some toys from childhood, such as a doll bed or a dollhouse. Also furniture from my parents' home. Anything that you have a direct line of memories attached to the item is on a whole nother level of difficulty to manage. Those memories transform the item from an object on the store shelf when it got bought to an object knitted into the fabric of your life. To the outsider, it's an old dress or a beat up baby doll, but to you, it's the main character in a play in your head. We forget that the item is not the memories and vice versa. In real life, it's still just an object that somebody bought at a store or somebody brought from, somewhere, but it's still just an object. But what makes it hard is all of those overlaid feelings that you have about it. A sidebar, sort of an ancillary one, is associating the stuff with a person. If you have an association with a person for the object, like Lauren wrote, family heirlooms and items associated with another person are the hardest for me, especially if the person is deceased. And this memory-laden item is the more so because the person's gone. We know there are no more memories to make now, and that makes the finite memory bank so precious to us. We can never add to those memories, and so don't want to diminish the volume of memories that we have. It's one of the things that you come to learn when somebody important in your life passes away, that you live with the prospect of more memories to come. And instead, you get to the point where now there are no more memories to come. And then it makes that finite set of population really, really valuable to you, doesn't it? Millie said, it's hard to declutter photos as I feel like I'm throwing away my family. Oh, I hate that. Okay. I do get that feeling. I do understand that perception that because it's a picture of someone you know, you feel like you're throwing away the family. But the truth is that photo is just a snapshot in time, and it's a piece of paper, and the feeling and the memory that you have in your head is much more valuable really than that photograph.
You know what I thought of when I read that one was there's a quote, and I'll bet one of our listeners here live can remind me who said it.
You're right.
It was, and I'm probably misquoting it too, but it's along the lines of your grandmother's tea set is not your grandmother.
Yes.
Do you remember who that was?
Adam, whose last name is now escaping me. Yes, I know what you're saying, and I can't remember the person. but yeah, it was similar. It was along that line, right? Like the tea set is not your grandmother. Photos are their own, because you can see the person that you're remembering. It makes it a little bit harder to throw out photos. But the truth is, not every photo is the best one, and not every photo is a perfect representation. And you have a collection of high quality, good pictures, good representation. You can see the person better. Like there's always ones that are more, they're better representative samples than some others. And so selecting through and picking the best means that you keep the best photos and the rest become extra. They become more than you need to manage. And if you keep the best representatives in that photo collection, you're keeping a lot of really good memories and pictures without keeping the whole volume. And so just think of it as you're thinning the photos down to the quality that you want to keep and not the quantity.
Okay, the next one we heard was historical value and what we're calling the end of the line problem. And Jean wrote, I wish to pass on family items that are up to 300 years in the family. I have cherished and cared for these items. 2 of my 3 children care nothing about such things. They have different sort of lives and interests.
And the truth is, not everyone is into history. And just because we have an interest in it and have cherished something down the years doesn't always translate to an interest in others that come after us. And you can't blame them for that if that's not what they're into. We all have our own things to focus on that bring us joy and that make us feel. Andrew Mellon, thank you. He's the teacup. I knew it was Andrew, but I couldn't come up with the Mellon part. Thank you. Anyway, we all have the things that we're good at, the things that we find interesting, the things that we're inspired by. And for some people, it's history. And for other people, it's not history. And so I think that you have to, for the people that are into that history and that have saved it and loved it, you have to take your enjoyment from your time of keeping the object. You have to allow that to be a good experience for you. Like you've spent the time keeping up with them and you find it rich and rewarding to do that. And then accept that what happens to the item after you're gone is it goes into somebody else's hands. And if it leaves the family, maybe it will go out into the world and some other person that's interested in history will pick it up. And maybe they won't have your family history about it, but they'll recognize that from a history standpoint, it's an interesting and valuable thing. And so they will pull it into their family story. It may not be the most ideal thing for you. I mean, like you may prefer that somebody in your family wants it, but if they don't, you can donate them away and trust that someone else on the planet is into history like you are, and that someone else will pick it up and think it's fabulous and wonderful.
Marcia mentioned in the chat, my cousin donated my ancestors' furniture to a local heritage museum.
There you go. Right. Because it was interesting enough and old enough that it would be useful to a heritage museum. That's great. There's always somebody out there that likes the history. And this is where, sometimes you have to release the items into the wild and you may not know where they end up, but you can trust that just like you found them valuable from the people that you got them from, someone else down the line will pick up this item and think it's fabulous and, take it home and cherish it as well. You just may not get to see or know who that person is.
Okay, let me read the next quote to you. This one's from Chris, talking about photographs again. Photographs are my hardest category as I sort of phase into the elder category in my family, and mom has passed almost all her photos and albums to me and my brother already. It feels like I have to keep some of them, but I'm uncomfortable with the volume, and I'm not detecting much interest from the next generation in these family photos either. The heirloom album I put together, in which I put all the ancestors and family tree info I wanted to keep, feels like something I'm okay with having all my life, and whatever happens to it after I'm gone, well, that's okay because I enjoy looking at it from time to time now. I dearly wish I didn't have the volume of pictures left in about 3 medium plastic tubs, though. It feels like I'm the end of the line.
Several respondents have mentioned having children who have no interest in their stuff. And to some extent, this phenomenon is really nothing new. Young people are often aren't interested in the past in the way that older people are. But I mean, that's just our point of view, right? Young people are looking forward. Older people are looking back over their lives. And so it's just our point of view associated with our age. But observers of the societal trends of recent decades have pointed out a drift in the direction of a more minimalist attitude towards stuff. And the younger generations don't know what to make of the albums full of paper photos and music and movies on physical media and so on. They're digital natives, so they're apathetic about a lot of physical stuff that was such a big part of the lives of us older folks. We're used to all those things being physical, and they're used to all those things being digital. And so I'm sure they're looking at those 3 tubs of photos that you have and thinking, please God, don't pass those down to me. And so we can't blame them for their point of view. They've grown up in a different environment that we have. And B, you don't want to feel the burden as well of all those big tubs, right? Like you've got 3 medium tubs full of stuff. So it's not unusual that there's what I think of as the last man standing, the last person that ends up with everybody's collected photos everywhere. And for some people, the train, the train pulls into the station at you and you're the last one, and the people behind you either don't exist or don't have an interest in having them. And so I think you get to go through, and now you get to decide what is valuable and what isn't, what is important and what isn't. And there are going to be gradations of, you have a whole bunch of these photographs for this event, or I can't see any of these, or I don't know who all these people are. If you're the last one standing and you don't know who the people are, and there's no indication of who the people are, then I'm not sure that there's any point in keeping the photographs, because your kids or anybody else that's coming behind you is not going to know who those people are. So I think this is where you get to filter down. Okay, we don't need all of these. We don't need 3 tubs worth. We need to filter this down to a manageable collection. You've already done your genealogy and family history book, which is great. You've got something that you can sort of say, here's the volume, and hand it to the kids, which they will feel obligated to keep, I'm sure, for a while. But all of those tubs are really just everybody else's postponed organizing project that nobody wanted to face or deal with. And now they're all at your house. And so you can either ignore them and pass them to the kids, or you can start to filter them, do the work that everybody else didn't do, and pass to you instead. Sorry, you're the last man standing. Sorry, you're the one that got the big project. And I think at this point, based on the fact that the kids really don't have any interest, and you already have a genealogy book that you're happy with, I think you can go through those pictures pretty ruthlessly and, thin the herd out, and know that what you pass the more concentrated and the easier to manage what you pass along is, the more likely that the kids will keep it, even if they feel apathetic about it, even if they don't feel interested, they'll still keep it around. And as long as it's not overwhelming or too much for them to manage.
And maybe by the time that day comes, they'll be more interested. They'll be older.
And looking back a little bit more.
Something may have sparked their curiosity about the family, about your history.
And there's only so many pictures of people that they don't know or that were long since gone before they were born that they can manage or keep up with. Like, part of why you're attached to so many of the photographs is because it's all people that you knew in real life. But for the people that come behind you, they don't have that attachment. They don't have that experience. And so we all are interested in the people that we actually knew in real life, and the things that came way before us become less and less important in terms of volume and keeping a volume, because we don't know who they are and we don't have a relationship with them. And so keeping a representative sample of stuff that's older and thinning down what's current will really help your kids accept what you've got and keep up with what you pass them instead of giving them an overwhelming job to work on. There you go.
Okay, let's talk about the fear that we'll need the thing later.
Isn't that like organizing, decluttering problem 101? That's like the number one problem. Yeah. We might need it later. So D says, I have the fear of throwing something away that I might need later, the what if problem. And we've talked about this a million times. Many of us worry about running out of something, and what if we need it? We forget that we have a time, that we had a time in our life without this object beforehand, and we can find an alternative solution if we suddenly are without something. Maybe the alternative is not going to be what we're used to, but we can get used to something else. The real underlying issue here is fear of scarcity, worrying about not having enough of something without trust that there will be a way to cope, even if we don't have it. There may be a point in your life where you don't have something that you want, but is it going to kill you? No. Is it going to really make your life hard? Probably not. There's probably a solution. And even if it's not your preferred brand, your preferred product, your preferred solution, the way that you like to do it, there will still be a way. And so I think dealing with this one really involves thinking about ways to see it differently instead of trusting in scarcity, trusting that there is a solution to what you find missing, what you don't have, what you in the moment, what you've run out of, that there will be a solution.
Okay, let's talk about the problem that I called not enough space, period. Sandy wrote, we have our daughter and son-in-law living with us, so we all are feeling the pinch of not enough storage for 4 adults with all of our clothing, food for different diets, hobbies, and just plain stuff.
And when you're sharing space meant for 2, that you're actually sharing with 4 people, it's going to be cramped. It's bound to be cramped. That's a type of household merger, right? One couple has moved in with another couple and without a plan to manage the stuff probably. Even in these emergency situations, you need a plan to merge 2 households, and it likely should include a storage unit to prevent complete overload. I'm guessing that the parents and the younger couple both intend to have separate lives at some point, that this is not a permanent solution. And so it's in response to some kind of, we're saving money for a house, we lost a job, we don't have a down payment yet, whatever that temporary situation is that makes having those 2 couples live together, it's a temporary situation. And so planning around that and not just jamming all of the kids' stuff into the house and making it too tight. Like, let's have a conversation about this. Like, it's worth it. These are all things we want to keep. And when we move back out again, we want all these things to go with us. Therefore, we need to go store these somewhere else besides the house that we're in. It's worth spending the money to have those things be out from underfoot if they can't be used right now because you're living in the parents' house. get those out of the way. Don't make it more chaotic in your parents' house, and make it easier for the four of you guys to coexist. I think that's the best I can say about it. Like you've created a household merger here, and you've done it with two couples with all of their own belongings into one house. And of course that never works. And so you really need to figure out a plan about how much stuff needs to stay in the house and what can be removed to make it easier for everybody to move around in there. And know that you're doing that as a temporary solution, that it won't be permanent, that all the stuff is in storage. But spending that money on a storage space to remove the extra out of the house is to everybody's mental health and well-being, right? Like it's an expense that makes it easier for the four of you to coexist. There, that's what I have to say about that.
On the topic of fear of scarcity, great comment from Samudra. She said, one algorithm I apply is, didn't I get by without this before I owned it? Or how did I get by?
Right, exactly. Because once we have it, we feel like it's ours and we can't imagine not having it. But there was a moment right before you got it where you never knew it existed and you didn't have it in your life. It's not hard to, if you think about it for a minute, it wasn't always part of your life, and you were still living your life and having a great time without it. So remembering that you lived without it, and you had a moment where you coped a different way, and maybe this solved a problem. Maybe this just, was something that you found interesting and fabulous, but there was a time when you didn't have it and you were still, having your happy lives. That's a good point, Samudra. Thanks for sharing it.
I like that. I feel like there's a bonus tittle in that.
Right.
It's think about something that you're having trouble deciding about and ask yourself, didn't I get by without this before I owned it?
Before it came.
Yeah.
Right. Before I inherited it from my mother, or before I bought this at the store. Yeah, 100%.
Okay, one more on the topic of not enough space. Lynn said, there is more art than I have room for on walls without it feeling claustrophobic. But I like to change the art on walls occasionally, so want to safely store art pieces not currently on walls.
And that means that you need to plan to use some of your storage capacity for this purpose. If all of your available storage is full, then it's time to prioritize the art collection that you want to rotate and eliminate some of the other items that are taking up storage space that you need. If you really want to sort of make your house a gallery and be rotating the art out periodically so that you get to look at all of it because you like all of it, then you need to create a storage space that allows you to put things in and out easily so that it's easy for you to find what you want. Like you need to think about what closet, what corner of the room, what section of the back room is going to hold all this stuff. Because it is a rotating active collection, and you need to be able to move through it and store the stuff easily and not causing problems in the storage, and still be able to get in there and pull out what you want and, change it out and put stuff back. And so finding that storage space that seems logical for that can support your free movement amongst the things and to keep the stuff safe. Finding that location in your house and then clearing it out to receive the artwork is a trigger for you to clear out some old storage, right? You're going to find some closet somewhere, I hope, that you can walk into and store this stuff. And in order to make it really function well, you're probably going to have to empty it completely of what's in there. And so it's going to trigger you to go through and declutter a whole closet. And then you have the room that you need to make the artwork data bank, storage room, hidey hole, whatever you want to call it.
Repository.
That sounds very gallery-esque, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, let's talk about the problem of having a hard time seeing progress. Peggy mentions not feeling very accomplished after doing a big pile of paperwork.
This is a really particular problem that's related to paper, and that includes photographs as paper as well. You put in a lot of work And someone that's unfamiliar with their project might not be able to tell that you've made any progress at all. It's also detailed, and there's so many decisions per each page of paper. And that makes tracking the amount of trash and shred and recycle you put out every time you work on it so important. You really need to look at the bags of trash, look at the bags of recycling you made, and keep track of that so that it can remind you of how much work you've done. Sometimes we go through a bunch of paper and we end up with this is what we saved, and you've, reduced the stack by 3 inches, and you're like, the stack's still there. It doesn't look any different. What did I do? And then if you turn around and look at, oh, there's the recycle bin and there's the trash. And now all that paper is in those bags. And so you really have to reflect on what's outgoing when you get to the end of a project. It may not look much clearer where you're working, but if you look at your output, it'll remind you of all of the work that you've done. And it's the nature of the paper. This is why, you sit down and you don't try to get to the bottom of the pile. You just agree to work for an hour or 2 hours. And then you do the happy dance that you have 2 hours of trash to throw out and take pictures of it or log it on it. We've talked about logging it on a, chart. I'm working on the paper project and I took out a bag of trash and a bag of recycling and keep that log so that you can see that number growing ever greater, because it'll be an amazing amount by the time you're done. A lot of times I'm in an estate right now, and we're working on clearing out all of the paperwork related to the family so they can have an estate sale, which means you got to sanitize the house, right? So we're going through paper everywhere. And I fill up the recycle bin every time I'm there. Like, we manage to fill it up all the time. And so rolling that bin to the curb and having another, 15 tons of paper go out is a great way to say, yeah, I'm making progress because I'm filling up the recycle bin every week. And that is that much less paper in the house in this estate sale. And so ultimately the papers are in boxes, they're in cabinets, they're in file cabinets, they're in, drawers. And so we empty the stuff out, and the only result is the file cabinet's still there, but it's empty. The drawer is still there, but it's empty. So it's kind of hidden progress, but it is definitely progress when we go and look at the recycle bin and realize it's full. And I've generated another bag of shredding to go to the shred pile. So you have to track your output on that and watch the cumulative nature of it as you work.
Let's circle back to some of the specific problems our audience members mention in survey responses, like medical and assistive equipment and supplies. An anonymous respondent wrote, it takes a lot of planning and upkeep to keep pathways clear, and yet keep frequently needed items within hand's reach. God forbid something falls to the floor and I don't have a grabber or reacher within reach.
Yeah, and there's a delicate balancing act there to be done between removing as much clutter as possible so that it doesn't impact your mobility, and balancing that against the need to have assistive devices close at hand when you urgently need them. And I think part of how you accomplish that is having carts that have wheels so that you can pull things closer to you, push things away from you if you need to, and that getting your hands into something in the cart that's on wheels means that you can sort of maneuver it around until it's in place where you can grab it. And then designing a few things that are must-haves, like you got to have a grabber. And so make sure that the grabber has an easy reach place near where you sit. And then if you have more than one place where you might need the grabber, having multiple grabbers parked around the house in high use areas, I think would be super important as well. Ultimately, you want the pathways to be clear. And so figuring out, this is like having multiple use pots in the kitchen. You don't want a bunch of stuff around you that is only necessary for one use. If you can figure out something that will work for more than one thing, that's the better choice to make in this environment, so that you do have less items that serve more purposes to help the volume that's parked around you.
To keep that space as clear as possible. Okay, Diana was the one who mentioned her husband's old computer parts and tools. She says, he keeps saying, yes, we'll do that. but there's always a higher priority in his opinion. And Kathy also mentioned her late husband's garage stuff. No idea what to keep or throw away, she said.
Yeah. And collections that you don't understand or that you don't relate to or have no idea about the values make it really worrisome to try and make decisions on them. And, I get that Diana's husband's like, yeah, we'll do that. And then he always finds something else to do that's more important. That's his reflection of he's overwhelmed at the potential of going through the process, and he doesn't want to dive in and get started. And in talking about chunking that down to smaller bits and telling them that he doesn't have to do all of it at once. Like you don't have to look at all of your old computer parts and tools in one sitting. You can just look at some of them and then walk away and come back another day, like giving him a way to go through it bite at a time. I'm guessing that he just feels overwhelmed with, I don't know what decisions to make. I don't know what I think is important, and letting him dive in a little piece at a time. And then maybe ask him, maybe having that conversation about what's making you hesitate. Do you feel like you don't know what's important? Do you feel like you are struggling to make the decisions around it? And how can we get some help to let you make those decisions better? Like, how can we hire somebody who's a computer guy to come in and tell us not important, not important, not important? I did that at my friend's office. I call my friend Karen Baker, who does tech support in her organizing business, and said, I need you to come and go through all of this hardware and software, all these manuals, and tell my client, this is important, this isn't important. And you can let go of this. Nobody cares. And nobody's going to use this, forget. And so she allowed Karen to come and do that. And we shrunk, 2 boxes of software and hardware and cords into, a tiny little pile. And it was great. And because Karen evaluated it for her, she felt comfortable letting it go. She didn't have to make the decisions. She let Karen make the decisions, and she trusted Karen to do a good job. And so then it was easier for her to let it go. Maybe your husband needs some support in making those decisions. You might rope in somebody to come and help.
Yeah. And Kathy may be able to find an expert among her neighbors or extended family, someone who could help out in that garage and help her make the decisions.
Well, and a garage is always a large room, and there's always a lot of stuff in it. And so you probably can't do all that in one sitting. And it's going to be one of those things where you have to go work in, this quarter of the garage and come back another day, and work that quarter of the garage and come back another day. And so evaluating it in pieces will make it easier for you to manage.
I want to share a question from the chat, and
Okay.
I'm not sure if this person sent it to me directly, so I'm not going to name her just in case she didn't want to be named. But she's combining 2 family stuff due to deaths, and has arranged a climate controlled storage unit, and she asked whether we have an episode on storage units. Do you remember?
That's a good question. I probably haven't. I've talked about storage units a million times, but I'm not sure that we've ever done a show that was specifically about storage units.
So I might have to poke around and refresh. I remember something in which we used a photograph of storage units, but I don't know whether that was a topic for a whole show or something short that we wrote. So
yeah.
We'll dig into that and get back to you.
And you want some hints? Like I would say, storage units they need to be, you need to have some, racking in them so that you can stack the boxes up without having you don't want to have to unpile 6 boxes to get the one on the bottom. You need to be able to walk around in there. It's no different than any other closet. It's just a big closet. So you need to lay it out in such a way that you can move around inside it. And you can get to everything without having to unbuild big stacks of boxes or go behind, 5 pieces of furniture to get to the stuff in the back. And if you do have that problem because the storage unit is full, then you're just gonna have to start peeling it off the front. And work on the things that are at the front first.
It sounds like she's going into a new storage unit, so she was really looking
yeah.
for
So you can lay it out then.
Strategies to do it right from the start.
We
should do at least a short topic on that.
And you can, if it's a big, if it's 10 by 10 unit, then you can put racks around 3 sides, and then you can still have things in the middle as long as you can walk between the racks and the things in the middle. So you can use the full capacity of the storage space. You just have to make sure you have a path that walks all the way through into the back so that you're not blocked from getting everything. And, furniture stacks up. Like, what the furniture is, and you're probably not having to sort it or deal with it. So you can put furniture in the back and put some furniture on top of other furniture, like get creative about stacking it so that it doesn't take up as much space as it would if it was all laid out perfectly. And you can still put other things that you might have to sort through, or boxes of paper or boxes of other stuff that's small. You can still have those in the front of the storage unit and have them be accessible.
Let's talk about one more category that was suggested by a listener. AG suggested the topic of handmade items as a difficult category. And Lynn added art, both me and my mother created, as well as art created by others.
Right. Any art where we participated in creating it or knew the person who created it has so much more attachment to it, right? It's very hard to stay removed from these kinds of items. And it's something that there's something about the pressure we feel to honor the effort and the skill and the love that went into making the items. And ultimately, it's still just a fancy version of an object. Even though it's a handmade object, it's still an object that we have memories and emotions overlaid, felted into it. And I will say this, people that are super crafty, like Lynn's saying she made some and her mother made some, and it's likely that they made a lot between them. They're both artists, and so they were both there's probably a volume is what I'm saying. And so picking the best representative samples is sort of the way to handle that. Like, you want to find the ones that you think are the best artistically or have the most memories to you of spending the time with your mother while you guys worked on it, or whether you were around while your mother was creating it, that kind of stuff. What kinds of items have the most memories attached, and then which are the best finished products. I send you can send your art on to the next person. You can go donate it to the next person and let somebody else collect your art, and maybe you won't know that they got it. But the ones that you want to keep are the ones that have the most memories for you, and that are also the best examples, the best finished products out of the collection. It's hard.
All right. We had one more survey question. We asked our viewers and listeners, what's your favorite thing to listen to while decluttering?
Oh, we were so warmed to hear that so many of you listed the Clutter Fairy Weekly podcast or the YouTube video as what you listen to while you work. We appreciate being your silent, or not so silent, I guess. We appreciate you being your audio partner while you work on your stuff. And I'm glad that the videos can be used that way. It's great that if we're back there talking about clutter, that helps you stay focused. That's a good thing. A lot of our listeners also make use of other podcasts, especially organizing podcasts, as the background for the decluttering process. Silence was a frequent answer. Lori said, silence. I have to be able to think and make decisions and can't be distracted while doing so. I find that too when I'm trying to make decisions. It's hard to have something going on in the background. The next most popular was music, especially calming or restful music. Intignia said calming, restful, instrumental music. Words get in the way of the thinking process. Yeah, words I find distracting when I'm trying to make choices or evaluate data. I do find that it needs to be the music without the words, right?
Yeah, I can't listen to music with lyrics when I'm writing. I can put on instrumental music, but if I'm writing, no
Forget
lyrics.
it. Yeah. Because totally is confusing. Last word on the topic.
We're going to give the last word on this topic to a cat, which seems appropriate. Since pets are in charge of so many of our households, I'm looking at you, Hardy. An anonymous user shared this comment. Usually my cat is in the room with me as I go through things. She's always interested in checking out each item and sits quietly while I tell her all about it and the people it belonged to in the past. I'm not sure she understands the words, but she does understand the emotions because she nuzzles up against me as if reassuring me that it's okay to let it go on to someone else.
That's a very wise cat that recognizes you're feeling stressful emotions and is trying to be supportive. The cat gets that her job in this situation is to be a good listener and to be present while you process your emotions. Such a precious declutter partner. Thank you for sharing that story. I'm sure we've all had that same situation. And when I'm at client houses, I have to report that all of the animals have to get into the big middle of whatever you're doing because they want to know why the energy's moving around and why the stuff's moving around. And so whoever's household has pets, the pets show up to find out what the hell we're doing. They always want to know. So thanks for that story. I appreciate it.
We're just about out of time. I want to remind everyone we'll be back next week for our next live webcast on Tuesday, September 5th at noon US Central Time. As we mentioned near the top of the show, our survey yielded so many thoughtful and insightful responses from you that we couldn't fit them all into one episode.
Not even close.
So we'll be back. I know I'm like skeptical of whether we can do it in two.
Right?
We will figure out a way. We'll be back next week to explore even more factors that make some organizing projects and tasks tough and suggest more strategies to help you face the challenges. Join us on September 5th for A Hard Bargain, more of your most difficult organizing challenges.
Yeah, you guys really did so much. Yes, the title this week is an unstoppable force or an immovable object. This week's assignment is to explore one tough decluttering decision to see what it can teach you. If you haven't already done so, identify the category of stuff in which you experience the most difficulty as you try to declutter and organize. Select an item in that category about which you're struggling to decide whether to keep or to toss the item. And then write down 3 arguments in favor of keeping it, and then write down 3 arguments in favor of discarding it or rehoming the item. Then set the item and your list aside and revisit that later in the week and reflect on whether anything has shifted in your thinking about it. I like the idea here that you're going to not make the final decision. You're just going to say, this is why I want to keep it. This is why I want to discard it. And then you can just sort of sit with that and find out which side's going to win the argument, which side's going to win. And maybe it will enhance. You can see the roadblocks, but you can also see the benefits of keeping it or the benefits of letting it go and find out which is more important. Maybe it'll just help you decide that it needs to stay, or maybe it'll allow you to say, what I want to gain from letting it go is more important, and therefore I'm going to face the music and let it go. Come back and tell us how it goes. We'll love to hear about it.
Or come back and tell us why you're still on the fence.
Right, exactly.
That's also an answer.
That's also an answer.
If you're watching this on YouTube, we would love for you to join us live. We have a lot of fun here.
Yep.
To get notifications about upcoming events, we invite you to join the meetup group by visiting cfhou.com/meetup. You can also follow us on Facebook by going to cfhou.com/Facebook, or join our mailing list by visiting cfhou.com/subscribe. We'd love to hear from you, so keep those questions, comments, and topic suggestions coming on YouTube, Facebook, or anywhere that you find us. You can always reach us through our website at clutterfairyhouston.com.
Thanks, everybody, for participating so thoroughly and entertainingly in the survey responses. We really appreciate that you guys share your journeys with us in such an intimate and special way. We make good use of it. I hope you feel like we make good use of your sacrifices and your information, and we will bring you some more next week.
And I should mention, we're going to keep the same survey open this week.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Also, apologies to anyone who had difficulty with the survey. I tested, there's a feature where you can sort things by dragging them, and I tested it on a very small set of options. and it worked. And then when we put
We got
together
to
our
16.
longer list of, well, it was a longer list of options, and the options were longer,
Descriptions.
phrases,
Yeah, yeah.
and it sort of blew up. And so we asked that question a different way, and I'm going to remove the tricky one from the survey. So you can come back and if you didn't answer it again, answer it, or if you answered it and you have more to say, answer it again.
Yeah, we're happy for you to add to your previous comments. But again, we so appreciate how much you guys participate. It's so wonderful for us. And it really gives us an insight into what's going on for you and what's most important to you. So appreciate you. All right, we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.